Well, hello there, and thanks so much for stopping by Resurgam Connects, a new page on our website, which is sort of like a common room where our musicians pop in with ideas or inspirations or things to help us all enjoy this music that we love so much even more. In these really strange days when we spend a lot of time talking into devices like this with terrible hair and an empty diary on the desk, it's good to remind ourselves of what we're missing and how we can perhaps re-engage with it, but in a different way. So I'm talking today about a piece of music which we shared with some of our partner choirs last year, and which I know some of them have picked up on since, and we're going to go on and perform. And so I thought I would give a few little insights today about the sorts of things that we might look at if we were going to meet together and look at this piece in a workshop situation. The piece is by Heinrich Schütz, and it's called Selig sind die Toten. Heinrich Schütz, Schütz that is, U with a normal out. It's really important to get the pronunciation right because it can go horribly wrong. He was one of the key German composers, well, perhaps the key German composer of the 17th century, and really laid the foundation for German music for the next 250 years. A seminal man, much admired by Brahms and many others. And in the middle of his life, he wrote a collection called Geistliche Chormusik. It was published in 1648, a collection of motets, very important collection, and one which draws together so many of the themes which run through his output. It's a sort of meeting, if you like, of old and new, of Renaissance and Baroque, of vocal and instrumental, all compressed into quite often what are quite often short pieces. This beautiful motet sets a text from the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, which talks a lot about last things, about death and heaven and things like that. Here it's about the dead. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. The Spirit says they will rest from their labours, and their good works shall follow after them. That's the meaning of the text. It's a text, actually, I mentioned Brahms earlier. Brahms himself set this text at the end of his German Requiem. So let's talk a little bit, first of all, before we delve into the piece itself, just about some initial things to do with, say, the addition and the speed and that sort of thing. There are lots of versions of this piece available, particularly online, CPDL, IMSLP, and so on. They all have various editions. You need to choose carefully, and you need to check against a reliable edition if you can, to make sure that there are no mistakes, as quite often there are. I'm going to use the edition that is in this anthology, which is known to many choirs, which many choirs have, European Sacred Music, published by Oxford University Press and edited by John Rutter. It's a good edition. It transposes the piece upper tone into G major, whereas Schütz's original was in F, but the pitch that was probably used by Schütz, it probably sounded in G or something near it. So G major is a good key, I think. Though F works as well, so if F is better for you and your singers, that's grand too. The speed. It's very clear that you've got two different types of texture here. You've got the slow chordal sections, and then you've got the faster, more instrumental sections with the quick figurations. And I think you should look at both in deciding the speed. I feel it should move in 2 rather than in 4, so that these slow sections have lots of life and buoyancy, and that you can really feel the harmonic flow. And the fast sections work in 2 as well, because the harmonic movement there suits that rather than in 4. The language. If you've not sung in German before, or you've not sung in German very much, I do recommend singing it in German. This edition that I've got in front of me here has an English translation, and it's a singing translation, so you can sing it in English from this version. I should point out it's a singing translation, so often the words don't exactly mean what the original German word at that moment means. But German is not, for those of us who don't speak German, it's not actually that difficult. With the help of a good coach, if you have a German speaker in your choir, or you have access to a German speaker, you can persuade someone to come and help you. It's relatively easy to assimilate what's needed here, to get your mouths around it. And the key things are the quality of the consonants. You need to be busy with your pencils. So, for instance, this opening phrase, Selig sind die Toten, the S sound at the beginning of a word in German is always Z. So you cross out the S, you write a Z. The G at the end of that first word, I would always write 2 G's in there because it's not G, it's H, and you want Selig. The G has to have some life. So just to remind you to do that. Sind, another Z sound at the beginning of the word. Then the T at the end of it, the D, sorry, at the end of it should be a T. So it's sind, sind D, sind D. You've got a T and a D there. It's very important that these consonants, which are not what we might expect, that you know what you're doing there. And as I say, writing them in really, really helps. A few problematic vowels here. In the first word, you don't want a diphthong on that first vowel. You don't want Selig, nor do you want Z, but you want somewhere in between the two, perhaps erring towards the latter, a little bit more E than A. Z, Z. But again, a good German speaker will help you hugely here. My German is a sort of Hiberno Kiwi German, so it's not terribly reliable. So, but I'm just going to give you a few little pointers there. And then the other key word here for vowels is the last word of this phrase, Toten. It's not O or O, but again, somewhere in the middle. And find a sound that you can make naturally, thinking perhaps of another word. I think O, it's a sound we make a lot in New Zealand. O, O. It's in the accent. So I can match that vowel if I think about that. So find something that just triggers a memory perhaps for you to help you with that problematic vowel. And then the second part of this opening phrase, die in dem Herrn sterben. Some key things there. There are 2 different E sounds. The dem, it's a bit of an E, and then he, it's a bit more E. And again, your German coach will help you get those exactly right. I'm just sort of pointing out what you need to be looking at there. Herren, the R's in German, I think the safest to say it's best to roll the R. To pronounce it really authentically is quite hard to get the guttural German R, but the key thing is to avoid swallowing it. But Herren, with a rolled R, with the tongue forward, really gets the desired effect there, I think. And sterben, the S at the beginning of a word where there's a consonant following is sterben. So a little bit about the text there in this opening phrase. But let's hear a little bit. I think I'll play a bit. Because I'm cooped up here at home without a choir, I have to play it for you on the organ. But it'll give us a feel of the music and what's happening. So that's the opening phrase. It's important to understand the meaning of the words, what they mean, and how that influences the musical language. Selig sind die Toten. Blessed are the dead. Selig, blessed, Toten, dead. Easy words to remember. Okay? Really make sure that every time you sing those words, you know what you're singing. Again, even if German isn't your natural language, you can take on that sense of understanding it, I think. Then the next phrase, die in dem Herrn sterben, who in the Lord die, as it were. In German, the verb is often at the end. Sterben, die, the Lord. Who in the Lord die. So we've got 2 different ways in which the text is fleshed out in the music here. In the first few bars, there's a very slow rate of harmonic change, which really draws us into the meaning of the words. It's really what the harmony is doing there. It's important important that everyone understands the harmony, feels the harmony. Now, you don't need a degree in music to understand what we call a plagal cadence or a 4/1 cadence. We all know how it feels. And it's really important in this music, that 4/1 moment. It happens so often at cadential moments. And so there's these opening few bars, feeling the growth towards the chord 4, and then its resolution to chord 1. It's chord 4, and then the resolution to 1. If you feel the harmony, then you'll shape the phrase accordingly, and you'll make it grow towards that word Toten, and then just releasing the tension a little bit on the final syllable. And then things lighten up. So just a little light there for the next phrase. And we're going there to the word Sterben. So and then you just pick up the bow, as it were, just a little bit more instrumental in the feel there. And just a little word about tuning here. I won't get into tuning too much because it's such an interesting but complex area, but a few pointers to make the tuning here perhaps a little bit closer to what Schütz might have heard, and to make the music more colourful, really. Generally the thirds, particularly at cadential moments, the thirds can be a little bit lower, or quite a lot lower, and the fifths just a little bit brighter. So that little moment there, where we finish in B major, actually I'll show you that on the top keyboard here on the regale stop. This organ is tuned in an 18th century temperament, but there's a 17th century temperament, a mean-tone temperament, which is perhaps more suitable for this music. And if you just hear that chord of B major on this stop, you hear that very, very low third. I've tuned this regale stop on what we call mean-tone tuning. And all the thirds are pure. The thirds are very low, much lower than you might think, much lower than the thirds on a piano. So I would encourage the altos in bar 12 to drop that D sharp as far as they dare. And you'll hear, when it comes in tune, there's something that happens in the atmosphere. There's like a buzz that the chord gets. It really locks in. The other key thing for getting chords like that in tune is to make sure that everyone's singing the same vowel. Okay, and there it's an at vowel. The vowel is blended, then the harmonics will help you tune the chord. So that's the opening section. Then, of course, we repeat that text, Selig sind die Toten, but the music changes a little. We have syncopations. And so on. So that the repetition of the word and these syncopated leads, where you're coming in on a weak beat, as it were, or a half beat, gives the music this added energy, okay? And we need to think about how the breath works for us here, because suddenly, rather than delivering a great long phrase like you have at the opening, you've got these short little phrases. Selig sind, Selig sind, Selig sind die Toten. The breath is going to work differently there. Just take on as much as you need for those little short, energized phrases. Every breath, an informed breath, what you need for the job at hand. Don't take on too much air there. And then when you get to the cadence here, which is in bar 19, I think there, where we cadence then into E major, and this is another key moment to watch the thirds. I play that E major chord on the regale stop. You can hear the G sharp is lovely and low there. This is a bar where you need to be very careful. The sopranos have a G sharp and then they have a G natural, literally 2 crotchets later, as we go back into G major here. So you need to tune those very carefully. The G sharp quite low and then the G natural quite bright. And the tenors need to be listening to the sopranos there very carefully as well. So that leads us on to, well, we repeat that text there. There's some lovely antiphony then in the next section from about bar 20 onwards, where we get different types of choir answering each other, high voices and low voices. It's like Schütz is looking back to his sort of Venetian adventures, and it's almost like a polychord texture there with this antiphony between different voices, groupings of voices. From about bar 32, the harmony gets more interesting and some suspensions begin to appear in some parts. So if you look at the second soprano part from bar 32, it has some suspensions there from bar 34. And you can hear that moving against the strong beat. You get those ties over the strong beats. You need to respond to that with plenty of colour at the points of tension where you feel the dissonance. Something again to be aware of, listening to the harmony and how it influences, how it allows you to express the text with a little bit more emotion and feeling. The altos then have the same idea. They pick up with some suspensions, slightly different ones, 4/3 suspensions leading into bar 38, and then 2 bars later. And again, just be aware of the harmony there and bring those out a little bit. This little joining moment from bar 36, it's like a little scene change, if you like. We've had the opening text there, blessed are the dead, and for they die in the Lord. And then here, it's this sort of from henceforth moment, therefore, if you like, the Spirit says. So quite a light touch here. Watch the text to make sure that von, the first word in this section, the V is like an F, von nun an. Altos, watch the tuning of that D sharp in bar 38. Nice and lovely. And then this next section, Ja, der Geist spricht. Yes, the Spirit says. Geist, Spirit, Ghost, spricht, says. That's a wonderful word. It's more consonant than vowel, isn't it? Spricht. And you need to hear all of that. Spricht, spricht. And Geist, make sure that there's an R vowel in there. Geist, just so that the word speaks a little bit. There's a wonderful sense of compressed energy here. The phrases are short, just 2 bars long, and then they repeat again with a change in the harmony, really leading us into the next section. So lots of energy here, perhaps some increase in the dynamic as well. And again, match your breath to what you need. Short breaths here for short phrases, just as much as you need. And then this next section, Sie ruhen. First of all, when you come into this section after the Ja, der Geist spricht, you've got this turning point in bar 45, and you need to control that really, really carefully. The breath between spricht and Sie needs to be one of intent. It needs to be one that takes on the new meaning, the new emotion, the new texture, in the quality of the breath. So the breath really prepares what's going to happen. Just at that moment, everything changes. It's like a scene change or the lighting change suddenly happening at the beginning of that bar, so that you can really prepare this beautiful phrase, Sie ruhen von ihrer Arbeit. You can hear here, again, a little bit like a previous section that we looked at, where you have a little short phrase and then a longer phrase. So think about the breathing you need for that, but also the transfer of the meaning. Sie ruhen von ihrer Arbeit. The meaning changes from ruhen, which is rest, to Arbeit, which is work. They rest from their work or their labours. Watch your rolled R, ru, and u, just think of the lips there, ru. And R, open R sound, think of the jaw, ruhen, Arbeit, so that we get the right colour on those vowels. There's some fantastic harmony here. When this phrase repeats then from bar 55 in a new key, having started in G major, in bar 55 into A minor. dominant D. This is a fabulous moment for the harmony. There's an awful lot going on. Suspensions, of course, but some added colour notes. If you look at bar 63, for instance, goodness, there's such a fabulous chord there. The bass is on the A, the first tenor is on the D sharp, and then the first soprano is on the F natural. You get an augmented chord there. And if you add in everything else that's going on, the A in the second sopranos, and then the suspension in the altos, you can hear how much colour there is in that chord. So it's wonderful to take apart a moment like that, get everyone to feel where they are in that chord, and then to feel how you grow to that moment. And that is the culmination, obviously, of repeating this phrase, Sie ruhen von ihrer Arbeit. So we really do get a sense of their labours resting there. It's important too to feel what you need to do with the breathing for these long phrases. Really feel that you've got that sense of a large aircraft flying close to the ground. It's always buoyant, even though the music is moving slowly. It never dies, it's always on the move. And then for the last section, this is one of those moments in Schütz where we really jump across the border of the centuries, and we, from Renaissance to Baroque, suddenly und ihre Werke folgen ihnen nach. This is the last section, and we really pick up our bows here. So quite a different sort of texture, quite a different way of singing from the slow chordal movements. So feel the quavers very light, und ihre, and the consonants will help you there, und ihre. Again, the D like a T. Werke, their works, their, and then folgen, this is a word to really watch the L. The first syllable of this word is much more about the L than it is about the O. Folgen. Feel the L, I always think of it with the L touching the upper teeth, folgen, and you'll get perhaps the right colour for that word, but again with the help of a good German coach to really refine it. Nach, at the end, nach. Okay, make sure that you've got that sort of cat sound. Nach. Ihnen, again watch the E vowel, ihnen nach. Perhaps a double N there as well, ihnen nach, to make it dance a little bit. Good, and then of course Sie ruhen returns then, but with greater intensity. To begin with, of course, it was in G major. And the big difference when this phrase returns in bar 73 is the key is different. And then notice the antiphony there. And then, of course, the phrase coming in again, that longer phrase, going to the really juicy harmony, which happens here again, but in a different key. It's upper fourth here. And then und ihre Werke, now back in the home key, as we are very much on the home straight here, heading for G major at the end. It's such a lovely texture here, and it really is like your good works are sort of dancing after you as you approach the pearly gates, following you into the afterlife. I don't know what happens if you haven't got any good works to follow after you. If you're going to the other place, perhaps they still dance as well, I don't know. Those bad works. Okay, and then at the end, just to talk a little bit about a couple of things at the end. It's such a radiant conclusion, and I think part of that is the fabulous thirds and the sopranos there. Over that fabulous 4/1 cadence that we were talking about earlier. Encourage the sopranos to tune those thirds carefully, and probably you would do the second to last bar in 4 just so that it can be nicely controlled, and then feeling those quavers as well at the end of the second to last bar. I think I won't say any more, perhaps far too much talking really. I think what I'm really trying to say here is that it's all about the speak through singing, that through singing we are speaking the text. that we have the text, as it were, in our minds and in our hearts as well, and that we understand how the text has influenced the musical language, and then if we understand the musical language, how it's reflecting the text, that's going to help us putting that across to our listeners. So going back to Monteverdi, recita cantando, it's really what it's all about. So I'll leave it there. I hope that's been helpful. Happy singing, and hope to see you all again before too long.